I began my life, I would say, in a very bad situation, in a rooftop residence. But
Being one of the most densely populated cities in the world, Hong Kong is home to soaring skylines, endless tourist destinations, and even a fair amount of tranquil beaches. The city boasts a shopping district that is second to none, as many parks and trails as one would ever need to hike through, and fine dining and entertainment establishments as far as the eye can see. Not only can Hong Kong cater to one's modern desires, but it has also stayed in touch with the beautiful and abundant traditions of China through its magnificent temples, museums, and gardens. The city truly embodies the idea of yin and yang, with urban modernization nestled into the tranquility of the natural landscape around it. However, the city that is known for its extravagance and wealth harbors a dark side, and it is not one designed to be branded as a perfect utopia. Hong Kong has a problem that is beginning to push its way to the surface. Right on top of the towering skyscrapers and right under our noses is a city above the city, Hong Kong's rooftop slums. Hong Kong is one of the world's most expensive property markets. Residential prices have almost doubled since 2009, and some experts believe that prices will climb even further. In Hong Kong's working-class neighborhood of Sham Zhu Po in the Kwu Lam district, the buildings are packed tightly together. A person on the street would not know on the rooftops above, thousands of people are living in ramshackle and sometimes dangerous conditions. Poverty is a serious issue in the city, and that problem has been exacerbated by the lack of affordable housing. It is not uncommon to see elderly men and women digging through overflowing rubbish bins, pushing carts loaded down with old cardboard boxes for recycling, or even sitting on the roadside selling vegetables late at night. The poorest of Hong Kong are forced to do whatever they can to make ends meet, and most of those end up being contributed towards paying their rent.
Much of Hong Kong can be characterized by exceptional beauty and opulence, and many of its residents can be described in the same way. As of 2012, the number of millionaires in Hong Kong has risen to 114,000, over a 35% increase. However, over 1.3 million residents were below the poverty line as of 2012. That means that 1 in 5 people are still living in poverty. And to make matters worse, the average gross household income of the poorest 10% of the population fell 16% per month in 2011 from 20 years earlier. Additionally, in 2014, statistics continued to show an upward trend, suggesting that there were 45 billionaires registered to live in Hong Kong at the time. Together, their combined wealth reached a total of $214 trillion, what would have equated for 80% of Hong Kong's gross domestic product the previous year. Consequently, as suggested previously, the rich continue to become richer, which places approximately 400,000 households under the poverty line at this time. And the only option for many of these people have been to relocate to a slum. But since Hong Kong is one of the most densely populated cities in the world, there isn't much room for them on the ground, so people had to look up for a solution. More than half of Hong Kong citizens reside in some form of public housing provided by the government, yet they are relying on a system that does not work. Even though the government promises a wait time of no more than 3 years, many are left waiting for up to 10. This is probably due to the fact that only around 15,000 public housing units are created every year, compared with the more than 300,000 people on the waiting list. This means that people only have 2 options: live in a slum or live on the street.
即係都睇佢環境都唔係話咁咩咯，咁啊平啲咯，平啲咁誒跟住。
真係香港真係有錢人嘅天堂，我哋啲窮人嘅地獄嚟㗎。你都知，你睇下。
咁習慣咗啦，習慣咗。佢做嗰時候，佢就會接受㗎啦。
As previously stated, the government is the largest developer and land supplier in terms of both public and private sectors within Hong Kong. However, there are many limitations on the amount of land available for sale within Hong Kong, thus the help of the Hong Kong Housing Society is often considered. On the contrary, this organization is non-governmental and also seeks to aid citizens by providing public, rental, and private ownership flats. Statistics show that from 1952 until 2013, 39,697 flats were brought to the market, providing more living opportunities at the time. However, although this policy served to be beneficial, additional government housing policies had to be implemented as well. Out of the many policies that were implemented, one of the most comprehensive is the Long-Term Housing Strategy, released in 1987. This policy served as the government's initial intervention within the market. The motives behind the strategy were centralized around many issues. For instance, this policy concentrated on the dilemma and imbalance regarding public and private sectors, increased wages, and the inability to purchase a home or land with rising prices, issues regarding the younger generation, who struggles to purchase property of their own, affordability, and lack of land. However, although the long-term housing strategy seeks to eliminate all of these issues, it is evident that many citizens are still struggling. In addition to this implementation, there have been many other housing policies within Hong Kong that centralize their concerns around different aspects and issues. Ranging from policies that have ended to those still being put into effect today, they were all created to provide benefits to those who are in need. For example, the home ownership scheme from 1977 until 2003, and then from 2012 until today, targets to remove the more stable families in public rental housing, PRH, to assist those with more urgent needs and offer ownership with the private sectors. There's also the Tenants Purchase Scheme, a policy that was effective from 1998 to 2006, which provided assistance to PRH residents by helping them purchase affordable flats. Lastly, the 85,000 plan, effective from 1997 until 2003, increased both the ownership rate from 52% to 70% and the amount of years that someone in PRH had to wait to obtain a home from 6.5 years to 3 years. Although there are many more housing policies within Hong Kong that focus on various aspects of the housing sector, it is evident that these policies, whether they're in effect or not, are not serving to be beneficial for all of those struggling within the nation.
Wealth gap, public housing crisis in Hong Kong can be described using Donellis Meadows' thinking in systems approach. It starts in the city of Hong Kong, where many of the wealthier citizens and organizations are taking over low-income housing and apartment complexes. This stock leads to the destruction of low-income and public housing, a flow that results in the lack of space, higher rent slums, and an increase in high-income luxury apartments. The destruction of low-income and public housing also leads to a decrease in the number and availability in low-rent apartments. As the flow of construction of high-end housing increases in this situation, the flow results in a stock of displacement and relocation to rooftop slums. Here, we end up with Hong Kong's dilemma of slums, overcrowding, and homelessness.
Despite the sharp rise in poverty levels, there has actually been a decrease in rooftop dwellers, a 76% decrease to be exact. While there are no shortages of people living in poverty, many of the tenement buildings upon which people build their illegal shacks are being torn down by developers, and those that still stand are riddled with rooftop landlords that are constantly raising rent prices, displacing thousands. However, this is not the number one threat to someone living in a rooftop slum. Considering most of these cubicles are smaller than 100 square feet, some of which are as small as 20 square feet and are constructed by hand, they pose extreme physical, safety, and health hazards. Residents run the risk of having their houses collapse on them due to the ramshackle walls and ceilings, the lack of a solid foundation, and susceptibility to severe weather damages.
打風咧就有時咧，好似嗰度咧天花咧就跌晒落嚟啊咁，出邊窗又滲水。
例如就打風吹到滿周圍都係塵，你係揞住個鼻啦，人哋行咗就唔覺咁嘛，諗乜嘢？
打風嗰陣時係點㗎？呢度？
打風會生咪由佢咯，佢吹唔冧咪算偷咗咯，係嘛？
乒乒乓乓咁吹到上面嗰啲磚啊，嗰啲乒乒乓乓，啲窗啊，全部都乒乒乓乓落嚟，好似一大風呢啲吹晒起嚟㗎啦，咁你又要整㗎啦。
And the living conditions inside are no better. Only 21 to 31% of slum residents were surveyed not to have any kind of chronic illness from their living conditions. This means that there are at least 70% suffering from health conditions due to the serious repercussions of living in a space some would consider uninhabitable.
You can see lots of animals or insects everywhere, like lizards and spiders. I was quite scared.
Many residents fall victim to this breeding ground of bacterial, viral, and respiratory illness and infection, potentially because of inadequate electricity or running water, poor ventilation, infestation, or simply exposure to the elements.
There are many things the city of Hong Kong can do to fix both the wealth gap and the government's housing policy, and these are the many things they must do in order to keep the city's head above water. First and foremost, the city should conduct a comprehensive study on the relationships between the rooftop slums and the resulting health issues to understand the true extent of the problem. Once this is done, then the city can work on improving healthcare plans for its residents in order to combat the effect of living in these horrible conditions. One of the most important steps that the government can take is to implement new policies in order to shorten the waiting time for people to receive public housing. Wait time can be reduced by constructing more public housing units to more closely match the number of people on the waiting list, and they can even employ the slum residents and homeless citizens on the list to build these housing structures. To mend the steadily increasing wealth gap, the skyrocketing house costs, which only benefit the developers, need to be immediately curbed so more of the population can afford housing. Considering the median housing price is 12 times the annual median household income, the ability to control the housing market is key. Another issue contributing to the wealth gap is reversely structural inequality, whereas real estate tycoons control many other sectors outside of the real estate, such as utilities. According to CNN, 3 companies in Hong Kong own approximately 72% of the residential property market in Hong Kong. The sheer density of Hong Kong population also breeds another problem, a lack of economically diverse jobs, especially in the presence of an ever-shrinking middle class. To reverse this, the city would need to undo their major resilience on its financial sector for the success of its economy, which fails to provide jobs across the socio-economic board. Because the financial sector mainly caters to the wealthier side of Hong Kong, and the fact that it's the largest sector in their economy, most working and lower caste citizens are excluded. Lastly, programs need to be put into action to assist socially marginalized groups, including ex-convicts, the mentally ill, immigrants, and drug abusers, many of which end up living in the slums.
With all that Hong Kong has to offer, most people never see past the towering hotels, pristine plazas, and massive shopping malls to notice the bleak underbelly of the city's poorest residential districts. Atop the buildings belonging to the world's most expensive property market is a community that is struggling to survive, surrounded by a society that doesn't seem to notice. With the middle class disappearing and the housing prices rising, the city might fall into the chasm of its own wealth gap, and its fate could soon be sealed, unless it takes drastic measures to keep its economy steady and make its people housed, happy, and safe.
My daydreams just reflect what I want to be actually, because no one will be perfect and I'm not perfect as well. The stories I create, those characters I created is a chance for me to become a perfect person.